First of all, I would like to stress that I will give a very short talk about this study. It's an ongoing study that began maybe 2 years and a half, something like that. So what was the starting point of our research? So we know some elements about Portuguese heritage language teachers, but in overall, the information about these types of teachers are relatively scarce. So there are some teachers that work for Instituto Camões, but there are a lot of Portuguese heritage language teachers that work for other organizations. And the starting point, so what characteristics of these teachers are? Where and when they teach, in what countries and so on. So the starting point was to address this issue, to have a more complete and full picture of these Portuguese heritage language teachers, and we try to use some methodologies in order to have a characterization of this sample of Portuguese heritage language teachers. Well, first of all, in terms of methodological terms of research, we have to make a choice, and a choice. So what we want to achieve, if we want to achieve a more profound study of a small sample, we definitely would like to. It will be necessary to use a qualitative methodology like interviews or focus groups and so on. But because we want to have a picture, characterization of these teachers that are teaching all around the world, our decision was using an online survey. So that was the starting point to record our data. And as you know, when we do an online survey, we need to have very careful to define which type of objectives we want to achieve. And we delineate some kind of objectives, and these objectives were then transformed into items, in which some items that use a Likert type scale, some items use open type of response. And in this online survey, maybe I can say that we have 5 main objectives. So the first one was to gather some biographical data. What type of teachers we're talking about, what's their age, what's their gender, and so on. The second type of data we want to analyze was academic qualifications. We know that they were varied, but we didn't know much more than this. The third objective was to analyze their teaching experience. For instance, the number of years of teaching, the number of schools in which they work, what type of schools which they work, the number of students, and so on. And the fourth objective was to analyze the beliefs and perceptions about Portuguese heritage language teaching. So we identify some beliefs and perceptions that could have an impact in the teacher attitudes and, you know, all sorts of things that they use as teachers when they teach Portuguese as heritage language of teachers. And finally, we'd like to understand more deeply the constraints and the professional development needs of these teachers. Basically, these were the 5 main objectives that we decided to explore. So after we construct a first draft of the online survey, as always happens, we need to test the online survey. And we use a small sample of Portuguese heritage language teachers of several parts of the world. We use what is called, sorry, I have this blank now.
Think out loud. Think out loud.
Thinking aloud method. Thank you. Thinking aloud method. It's a little bit tricky. It's a little bit complicated, but in order is to ask the question, and the questions were posed verbally, but at the same time with the real questionnaire, and try to obtain what the teachers think about the words and what they think about their responses, the limitations, the characteristics, and so on. And like always happen in testing online surveys, it was necessary to adapt some questions because although we have made a great effort in be objective, in language objectivity is not a one-way street. We use certain type of language, and the other people use interpretation different that we think. So we had to incorporate some changes in our online survey in order to build a robust survey from the methodological point of view. And then the next step was disseminate the survey through our contacts. And in this particular type of dissemination, we use contacts that were working with the Instituto Camões, that Isabel Maria Duarte knew personally, some of the coordinators of some of these teachers. So we tried to disseminate in all around the world, all the contacts that we had, this online survey. And I think it's fair to say that we were a little bit disappointed by the number of respondents. Although the number of respondents were 163 from several countries, we know there are a lot more Portuguese heritage language teachers all around the world. But for one reason or another, they did not comply with our request to participate in our research. So what can I say more about this sample of teachers? Well, the mean age is 44.7 years. The overwhelming majority are female teachers, almost 80% of the sample, and approximately 21%, approximately 20% are males. And we also, I'm presenting a very rough description of this. We also, it's necessary to emphasize that more than 50% of the respondents work in France and Switzerland. 55%, 55% to be more precise. And as you probably know, France and Switzerland are two countries for which there are a very long story of Portuguese immigration that started in the late 60s and had probably a peak during the 70s. During this time, there was a huge number of Portuguese, in most cases with no education at all or very limited education, that's emigrate to France and Switzerland. I myself, I have some members of my family that still live in Switzerland this day. In terms of academic qualifications, almost 70% of these Portuguese heritage language teachers, they have the first degree of higher education, but 20% have a master's degree and only 3.5% have a PhD. We unfortunately did not have any reply from countries that we know there are also huge number of Portuguese or Portuguese descendants living in these countries. I would like to stress South Africa. South Africa has a very large number of Portuguese and Portuguese descendants living there, and Venezuela. And it's impossible to say why we did not receive any type of responses from these countries. We have some theories, but they are almost hypothetical and they are not data based. One of the things that will strike us most was that an overwhelming majority of these Portuguese heritage language teachers work in public schools, more than 75%. But there are also other types of institutions like cultural associations, although less, approximately 20%. So cultural associations, probably they are associations that aggregate some Portuguese immigrants, and these Portuguese immigrants wanted their sons and their daughters to learn the Portuguese language. And sometimes they don't speak at all Portuguese in their homes, but even so, they think it is important for them to, for whatever reason, to learn Portuguese. Another result that it is very striking. It is the high number of students in classes. These teachers have a very large number of students, most of them, there are exceptions, of course, and at the same time, they have a high heterogeneity of students. So they have students in the same class with different type of needs, educational needs, and this for them, it's a very, very tough challenge. How to overcome the difficulties that necessarily happen in those cases. So in order to finish my presentation, this is a very brief presentation, I would like to say that all the quantitative data are now analyzed. It's a lot of data, so we don't present it here. and we are in the process of analyzing qualitative data. This is open questions that were used in our questionnaire in order to probe some specific objectives that it was very, very difficult to probe, to analyze using not using Likert type scales format or something like that. So this is also one of the things that I would like to share. It's that we are analyzing the needs of professional development needs of these teachers, and I believe that maybe 3 or 4 months, maybe in the beginning of the next school year, we have analyzed all the data. So I'm finished this presentation for now, and me and Sónia, we are here to answer some of your questions or other issues that you think it will be that you would like to pose to us.
And Fátima Silva too, because she's here with us.